Welcome back to the Computer Hardware and OS Essentials lecture series. I created these custom lectures based on A+ certification program, but with few enhancements to improve your IT technical skills and knowledge. If you haven't seen my previous videos, I will post a link in the description for the playlist. And this would be our 9th lecture, which I will cover input and output devices. The primary objective of this lesson is to cover types of connectors and cables, give you an overview of input-output methods and commonly used devices, thus including basic devices such as audio-video devices, keyboard, mouse, USB local printers, etc., and some specialized devices such as graphic tablets, signature pads, etc. And we will also cover things like KVM switches and docking stations. What is an input-output device or I/O device? I/O devices may be internal or external. So you could have an input-output device internally connected to your motherboard as well. Basic principles apply to both internal and external devices includes every device is controlled by a software. Best guide for installation and support is the manufacturer documentation if you are an IT technician. Some devices need application software to use the device, such as a firmware as well as like a driver software as well as a specialized software. A device is no faster than the port or slot is designed to use. So in other words, if you have a USB 2.0 port and you connect a USB 3.0 capable device, the maximum speed it can run is USB 2.0 because there are going to be a bottleneck at the port. So the device is no faster than the port or slot which it is connected to when it is acting as an input-output device. And you may have to use an administrator account in Windows in order to install some of the input-output devices, drivers and software in order for it to get installed properly. Problems are sometimes solved by updating the drivers or firmware and install only one device at a time. So it is recommended, so it's a basic principle in IT that if you are installing multiple input-output devices such as biometric card readers and mouse or keyboard drivers and everything, we are always recommending that you install one device at a time. Device Manager on Windows, which is called mgmt.msc, is the primary tool that we use for managing hardware. And that particular tool, which is the Device Manager, can also be used to manage our input and output devices. Using Device Manager, therefore, you can use to disable or enable devices, update its drivers, uninstall a drive, or undo or roll back a driver update. So if you are running into any issues or any technical problems with your input-output devices, you can use that Device Manager in Windows to try to get those issues resolved. Types of connectors. So for video output, we have video graphic array, also known as VGA, which is one of the oldest currently even in use video connector type. These are commonly found nowadays in enterprise and business servers because there is no need for any additional graphic capabilities. As the time goes by, we came up with new video technology connectors that includes the digital visual interface, which is known as DVI. They have different versions of DVI such as DVI-D and DVI-I, which are the most two common types. And then we have the high definition multimedia interface, also known as HDMI. What that has done is not only allow us to have monitors and displays that can run 1080p all the way to 8K monitors in 2022, but it also allows us to transmit audio through the same cable. So the HDMI cables have the capability to transmit video and audio signals at the same time. display port, another technology, and also with the new USB 3.0 and newer versions, you can also have video output channel through that type of connector. So the USB connectors nowadays can also handle video and audio as well. Audio connections, typically we use the 3.5 millimeter jacks. However, there are audio connectors that audio devices that can work using USB ports. Like for example, the microphone that I'm using to record this video is connected to my computer using a USB 3.0 jack. So basically, there are audio interfaces that can work with USB, because USB is a very versatile connector types. But traditionally, the audio connectors are typically 3.5 millimeter jacks on computers. Universal Serial Bus or USB, as mentioned above for video, as well as I mentioned a little bit under audio, includes the Type A, Type B, and Type C connectors. Please keep in mind the type of USB is not directly related to the speed at which the USB can operate. The type typically associated with the shape of the plug. So for example, you can have a USB C connector but may not be capable of USB 3.1 for example. So keep that in mind. This type is mostly associated with the shape of the connector with respect to USB. When it's come to the point network connectors, we have RJ45 connectors, which are the metal pin connectors we use, which plug it into your most computers and servers. Then we have the fiber optic type connectors, which include SC, LC, ST, FC, MU, DIN, etc., etc. So there are multiple different fiber optic connectors. So in this page, I have put together some images that I grabbed from the internet that represent some of those connectors. When it's come to the point fiber connectors, these are like different types of fiber connectors such as SC, E2000, MU, FC, ST, LC, for example. So these are like different way of terminating your fiber or optical fiber connections at the end of the cable. So and then once you have these type of ends, you have to have a specific devices that can take these type of connections for their fiber connections. And here in the middle of the page, we have the RJ45 jack. So these are used with Cat5 and Cat6 cables, as well as the non-standard Cat7 and cables, for example. Those are not standard, but the standard is Cat5, Cat5e, and Cat6 cables, and they would have a connector type like that. And you can either buy these cables directly from your store, a retail store, with the ends crimped like this, or you can make this cable by yourself. And again, in this lecture, because this is for A+ certification program, and this is not a network architecture or network engineering class, I'm not going to go into detail on different crimping methods and how you can crimp them, but just know that this is what the RJ45 cable look like. And when it's come to the point, things like optical cable, fiber optic cables, and RJ45 cables, I will do a separate lecture series on structured cabling, which I will cover in depth into different types of cable architecture and crimping methods and termination methods, etc., etc. When it's come to the point common audio connectors, as I mentioned, 3.5 millimeter jack, which jack looks like this, is the most common type used even today. And you can actually get multiple different types of those connectors as shown here on the right hand side. When it's come to the point USB, as I mentioned, the USB types actually denote how the USB connector gonna connect, like the actual physical connection. Like for example, the USB Type C is a type that is currently in 2022 being popularized as a result of very easy to use and manage type, because it can go in either direction. So it is a unidirectional or omnidirectional type of connector, so you can go in either direction. But if you look at the USB Micro B, it has this notch, so it only goes in one way. And if you look at the mini USB or USB mini, it has also this type of a specific design, so it will only go in one direction. And this type of USB 3.0 connector, which is not a Type C connector, can only operate in one direction. See, remember, as I mentioned in the previous slide, you can have USB Type C 3.0, or you can have USB 3.0 with a different configuration where you don't have that Type C connector, which is a connector is different, right? So just keep in mind, some people interchangeably use Type C, USB Type C with USB 3.0, but they are not the same. USB 3.0 is a standard that give higher speed and throughput, as opposed to USB Type C is a standard for physical connector itself. So you can have USB Type C 3.0, or you can have USB 3.0 without that Type C type of connector. When you come to the point video, and here is a graphic card that has a display ports. So right here we have one display port, and we have another display port and another display port, as well as this graphic card also support a HDMI out as well. Here's a HDMI out, as well as a USB out. Right here there's a USB 3.0 video out right here. So this graphic card has USB 3.0 video out with a Type C connector, a display port out for 3 of them, as well as an HDMI out. And here's a layout of what it looked like, a DVI types. So as I mentioned, DVI-I and DVI-D are the most common types, but you have DVI-A and other types as well. And the connector differ because of the pin arrangement, so that you can use a DVI-A connector on a DVI-D connector because the pin arrangement is different. So I know I went over quickly audio, video and everything else on that slide, but I'm going to go a little bit in depth right now. So let's look at the video in this slide. So output options depends on your GPU card or integrated graphics support. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, some graphic card have multiple video output options, but it all depends on your either GPU card or the graphic card, or your integrated graphics support. So some motherboards may have these multiple output already built into there as well. Servers, which are used in enterprise and business environments, typically have VGA because there is no need for a higher quality video output, and newer servers also do support HDMI as well. But keep in mind, most enterprise servers and business servers, even with HDMI out, is not actually supporting very high refresh rates because there is no need for it for a server. So you can, you may be able to install games on a server and directly play on the server itself, but it is not ideal because the refresh rates, even with HDMI out on a server, on enterprise level, not going to be as high because there is no need for it. So they try to save some money on that server because there are server components are extremely expensive. So that's why manufacturers try to avoid unnecessary components such as the high throughput HDMI. So you may find newer servers with HDMI out, but that does not necessarily mean it's going to support like 8K output. It's probably going to support maybe maximum 720 or 1080p. So when it's come to the point, if you want to compare those outputs, HDMI can support audio and video signals, as I briefly mentioned before, and best is used for TVs to PC connections. So if you want to connect PC to TV or TV to PC, the HDMI audio connector would be HDMI connector would be the best options. When it's come to the point, other devices, obviously devices such as Blu-ray players and DVD players and gaming machines such as PlayStation, for example, they also use HDMI because it's going to deliver both audio and video signal. But we are focusing here right now on computer systems, so that's why I mentioned just the PC connections to the TV. DVI, which only support video only and perfect for older systems that want to get 144 Hertz at 1080p because the VGA cannot do that. So that's why the DVI came into play. DisplayPort, also known as DP, is the best connector for an audio and video signal and can transmit 144 hertz, but this time the DisplayPort can support all the way up to 4K. So not only can support 144 hertz 1080p, but it can also support 144 hertz all the way up to 4K. VGA is an old legacy video connector, only to be used when nothing else is available. And keep in mind, as I mentioned, a lot of servers even nowadays do comes with VGA audio out, because there is not necessarily a need for it. One of the problem with that is that I have a couple of servers in my basement right now in my house, is that when the monitors break, current working monitors break, sometimes it's hard to find monitors that can support VGA, so I had to get adapters that actually have to convert that VGA into an HDMI or DVI in order for me to use it on the monitor, to be used it on the server. So that's one of the problem with legacy connectors, because you may not have supporting displays to go with those legacy connectors nowadays. USB Type-C, which is the newest audio, video, data and power connector. So as I mentioned, it is the best connector for laptops and mobile devices. But as I mentioned, keep in mind that Type-C is a type of connector. It's a design of a connector that it goes in either direction. You could have USB 3.0, 3.1 or some different types of USB supported on the USB Type-C connector. So it is the newest audio, video, data and power connector. It can support all of those types of mediums, and it is often used in mobile devices and laptop, and because it takes less space to implement, because the USB Type-C connectors are very small. But you could have USB 3.0 connectors that are not USB-C. So keep in mind, because I'm highlighting that fact that the USB 3.0 is not necessarily always going to be Type-C, because when I speak to people, even in the industry, they oftentimes use USB Type-C and USB 3.0 as synonyms, but they are not synonyms. They are not synonyms. So keep that in mind. So here we don't have a USB Type-C picture, because you already seen that on my previous slide. So it will look like that. So that's a USB Type-C connected look like. But in this diagram, it shows the mini DisplayPort, HDMI, dual link DVI and VGA. So these are like the most common video out that you will see. And with newer models, you will get the USB Type-C video out as well. Audio. Consumer desktop computers and high-end desktops may have dedicated audio add-on cards. Those could be typically PCIe cards, but they can also be PCIe cards. And those type of audio cards can support 7.1 surround sound as well as multi-speaker with very high throughput, and support multiple input and output as well. So keep that in mind. So some consumer high-end desktops may even have this type of audio already built into the motherboard itself, but that it could also be a PCI or PCIe card. So the cards look like these. So they will have the output sticking from the back end of it, and it will have a PCIe or PCI connector, and it will just go plugging into those expansion slots. But as I mentioned, there are some motherboards that are integrated audio. That is the most common type, that the motherboard will have all of these ports already integrated, built into the motherboard itself. So keep that in mind. So you can have 7.5 surround sound and multi speaker, multi input output, high throughput connectors even without a card if it is integrated onto the motherboard. Servers typically either have one audio output port and one audio input port, or no audio support at all, because at the enterprise and business level, unless you have a really need for this kind of thing, you probably not going to install that at all. There is no need for a servers in business and enterprise environment. Even if you are installing the server in a audio, video or audio visual production company, most people won't use this direct server audios to access audio configurations to access that audio data. They will be accessing audio data using their desktop computer, and the server will be hosting those audio video files, not necessarily gonna play it back directly on the server itself. So there, even if you install an enterprise or business server in a audio visual company, you would not be installing this type of card. So this is a tip mostly associated with home users, gaming computers, and high-end home computers. And there is a standardized color code with associated with the audio outs and ins, and that are described right here on this table. So for example, pink connector would be the line in mic. Typically that's where you plug in the microphone. The lime green is the line out front, which is the main front speaker or headphones. And the light blue connector right here, that is a line in, that is an input for MP3 players, musical instruments, etc. But you can connect a computer microphone there too, because the light blue jack is the same as the pink jack. It's the same input jack type. And the orange one is the line out, which is a center subwoofer, center speaker. And again, you can unplug it any way you like, but that's the recommended way. And the black one is the line out rear, which is going to be the rear speakers, and the silver gray one would be the side speakers. And if you install all of these things properly, you will get a surround sound system out of your computer. So let's dive into USB. So many devices utilize USB connections. That includes the printers, external hard drives, digital drawing pads, mouse, keyboards, docking stations, webcams. So many things can be plugged using USBs. So USB is a very, very versatile type of connection that allow flexibility for many, many different manufacturers with many, many different products. So that is very neat. So in terms of development of USB, USB first started to come into the consumer market as well as the enterprise and business market with the USB 1.0 that had a speed of 1.5 megabyte per second. And typically they are USB type A and type B. Then we had USB 1.1 that came into USB type A, type B, and also mini USB. Remember that connector that I showed you in the previous slides? So that's why the USB 1.1 introduced, and that had a speed increase up to 12 megabyte per second from 1.5 megabyte per second. USB 2.0 that have USB type A, type B, mini USB, and micro USB connectors. And in this version of USB, we increase speed again, but this time significantly up to 480 megabyte per second. Now with the USB 3.0 in 2022, which also known as USB Super Speed, also USB 3.1, which also known as USB Super Speed Plus, we have the connectors such as USB Type A, Type B, Micro USB B, as well as the USB Type C with the Super Speed Plus. And we jump from 480 megabyte per second, all these megabyte per second range, to gigabyte per second range. So with the 3.0 super speed USB, we have 5 gigabyte per second. With USB 3.1 super speed plus, we get 10 gigabyte per second. And that also come in USB type C. That is a really big jump from megabyte per second range. With USB 3.2, which is currently being pushed into the market as of 2022, only use USB type C, and it can handle up to 20 gigabyte per second. We again increase the speed. In near future, we will get USB 4 in the market, widely being accepted. That will come with the USB type C, but this time we're going to double the speed from 20 gigabyte per second all the way to 40 gigabyte per second. We double here as well, but we're going to double again right here. So this is currently being rolled out in 2022. So as a result, the most common standard as of now, at the time of the recording of this video in 2022 July, is the USB 2.0 and USB 3.2. The USB Type-C is a connection type change, not necessarily a standard change, so keep that in mind. Just like USB Type A, Type B is actually a connection type, it is not a standard change. However, because most of the USB 3.1 and up will have USB Type-C, most technicians and users and your end users will be referring USB 3.0 and up as the USB Type-C. Again, it is a really bad idea to mix those terms up, but I mentioned multiple times in this lecture, it is something that you're going to see in the field. That is something that you're going to come across as you work as IT technicians. People always misuse terms in IT, and when broad number of people, large number of populace going to do that, it becomes synonyms against each other, even though they are not. USB 3.0 is not a synonym for Type-C, but that is what it is. So keep that in mind. So network connections. So I already showed you what RJ45 connector and fiber optic connectors look like. So RJ45 connector is a twisted pair copper metal cable. It is a standard ITA, EIA, Cat5, Cat5e and Cat6 cables. So you can get RJ45 cables standard in Cat5, Cat5e and Cat6. But there are some non-standard cables such as Cat7 cables that are being pushed into the market by different companies and organizations, but they're not really actually standardized at this time. When it comes to point fiber optic, we have a situation where we use glass fibers and laser or LED light against those glass fibers to communicate. So basically its light is the medium that we are using instead of just electrical current, which we use in the this type of connectors like the Cat5, Cat6 connections, network connections. In fiber optics we use light and much faster speed and give you much better bandwidth compared to the twisted pair cables, and it also increase the reliability of the connection. So the fiber optics not only provide you with a higher bandwidth but also better reliability of transmitted data. And also one more thing I want to mention, better reliability over a long distance as well as better security as well, because it is much harder to intercept a fiber optic cable. Even though it is possible to intercept data on a fiber optic cable, it is much harder to intercept by a threat actor as opposed to a threat actor gaining access to a twisted pair Cat5 cable. So it's increased high reliability over long distance as well as increased security as well. However, fiber optics are still higher cost to implement compared to twisted pair as of 2022. The price difference between 100 meters of Cat5 cable or Cat6 cable is much cheaper compared to 100 meters of fiber optic cables even in 2022. In some places in the world, it is known as fiber optic cables. Sometimes it is called optical fiber cable. So that's why you may have heard me use these two terms interchangeably, fiber optic cables and optical fiber or fiber optic, because these are commonly interchanged words. And honestly, there is no difference between either one of them. So in this situation, doesn't matter, unlike the USB 3.0 and the Type-C misuse of terms, this is okay to call it either optical fiber or fiber optic. So either would be fine. Wired and wireless connection standards. So as a A+ certification student or someone who's studying for A+ certification, you should actually remember this table. So this table goes on the next page as well. So you should know the maximum speeds and these different types of connections. Unfortunately, these do show up on the exam, and they actually do even ask you, the maximum cable length. So if you are a student, I would post on these two slides and go over these speeds. So and the maximum lengths of different types of cables, because these are very important. Like for example, I don't even cover eSATA in this lecture, because it is pretty much being paced out right now. So I'm not going to cover eStarter version 3 or eStarter version 1 or 2, any of these things in this lecture, to keep the lecture time frame a little bit lower, but you should know what they are and how they are differ from each other. These 2 slides will get you like maybe 30% of your exams related to connection, input output connections questions. So pause it and learn it. I'm not going to go over it. Like I mentioned, I'm not even going to cover Wi-Fi right now in this lecture. I'm certainly not going to cover Lightning and and the eSATA. So but these 2 slides are very important for your exams and quizzes. So pause this video and make sure you go over this. Cable hardware considerations. So all cables have a limit on how much abuse those cables can take. Fiber optic cables are susceptible to damage more than the others. So fiber optic cables have something called a bending radius. I mean, all cables, every single cable, even Cat6 cable have a bending radius, but it happened to be very, very low. Like you can go really, really tiny radius and you should be okay. But with fiber optic cable, it is very, very sensitive to bending radius. So bending radius is basically calculated based on, you have a cable that gonna wrap around like a circular tube or something, and the maximum it can wrap around. So how small this tube can get, how small this circle can get before it breaks, is what is the bending radius is defined by. So that's what the bending radius is allow. So the smaller the bending radius, more you can actually make it bend, like you can bend it really tight, but the bigger it bigger this circle going to be, that basically means that cannot bend much. So the fiber optic cables are not not very doesn't have a very wide range of bending radius compared to that of the copper wire cables, because they are more susceptible to break of those glass fibers. Another thing you need to consider when it's come to cable cable hardware is the cable management. Cable management is not just for aesthetic, it looks nice for your boss or your management team, but it also increase reliability, decrease troubleshooting time, and make it easier to manage. So keep in mind, the cable management is not just for aesthetic, but it is also to increase the reliability, and also when the things go wrong, it is easier for you to troubleshoot the problem. So imagine you are working in a network closet or server closet like this. This IT engineer or IT technician is going to have a really hard time finding that one single cable that is got unplugged, because it is very, very mismanaged situation that you see here. So it is the cable management is highly mismanaged and it is poorly done, and as a result, it's gonna when things go wrong, the troubleshooting time gonna increase significantly, because now you have to go sift through bunch of cables. So it's not just for aesthetic, but it is also to increase the things like the troubleshooting, decrease the troubleshooting time, and make it easier to manage as well. So why also the cable management can increase the reliability? Imagine this cable is sagging on another cable, and that sagging cable may be a fiber optic cable that suddenly broke those glass fibers. So basically you decrease the reliability as a result. And if the cables start falling off from the top, like the sagging cables, that could damage the cable itself or the things like fiber optic or optical fiber cables lying below. So that's why it also increased the reliability as you increase your cable management capabilities. Servers usually have more network connections than desktop devices, but less the other types of input output connections. So what that means is on your desktop computer, you may have only one network interface output, so NIC output, right? Network connection. But servers will have like maybe 10, 5, 4, some servers have 10 plus connectors on there. So when you are plugging in those connections, label them properly and connect them properly, because if you have 100 people connected to that network, the last thing you need to do is to pull that cable out of the connection and then check it out what that cable is doing. which is really, really bad, because that will disconnect your clients, right? Those 100 clients. So usually servers have more network connections than the desktop connections. So make sure, especially when it's come to point network connections, that you take care of those connections properly, and properly label them when you're connecting to your server. Keyboard and mouse. For business or enterprise environments, the cheapest keyboard and mouse would be the most efficient solution. So whatever the keyboard and mouse that you can buy for the cheapest price would be good enough for most business and enterprise environments. However, there are some businesses that require specialized keyboards and mouses, such as creative arts, for example, video production and industrial design. So right here, for example, this is a Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve editor keyboard. This is like $3,000 keyboard, and it has a specialized keys that is specifically designed to, for video editing, and it has these kind of buttons and configurations. And this may be an option for your end user or client because they are in a video production environment or things like that. A typical cheapest keyboard that you can get look like this. This is an HP keyboard that comes in servers. So HP server would have a keyboard like this in Canadian market, because this is a French-English dual language market, because that is more than enough for that particular use. So these keyboards are extremely cheap. Like, for example, you can get a keyboard like this for like less than 90 Canadian dollars. And a keyboard like this gonna cost you upwards of $3,000, $4,000. So that's the differences in keyboard. So why somebody would need a specialized keyboard, because they are in video production, industrial design, and specialized areas where they need that kind of a specialized keyboard. And obviously there are gaming keyboards and mice that you can purchase for your end user if your end client or is a gamer. There's also something called ergonomic keyboards and mice. So ergonomic keyboards will have like a wave patterns on the keyboard and a specialized design, a specific specialized design that would alleviate certain discomfort for certain individuals. And ergonomic mice typically look like these, where your user will be holding the hand in a normal way, like in a typical way. But humans actually use the wrist in this direction, not in the way that we typically use with other mice. So ergonomic keyboards and mice may be needed for your business enterprise environment as well. Some companies do have policies which governs that who's gonna get ergonomic keyboards and mice. Those are typically after an evaluation or by the requested by the end user, because ergonomic keyboards and mice may cost a little bit more, but not as much as a specialized keyboard like this. So for example, ergonomic mice and keyboard might cost you upwards of maybe $200, $300 as opposed to like a $90 keyboard like this. As opposed to a specialized keyboard like this one gonna cost up to $4,000, $5,000, right? So that's why it is. And please keep in mind that older PS2 ports are not hot pluggable. So that means if your keyboard doesn't have a USB connection at the other end, and if it is a PS2 connection, once you exchange the keyboard, you need to reboot the system. Otherwise, it is not gonna get recognized. Even if it is a really old server, I don't know why any company or organization have a really old server that doesn't have a USB maybe connection. You have to reboot that server, which is a bad idea in a business and enterprise environment. So that's why USB keyboards are much better and easy to work with. Like this one is a USB type, this is a USB type, and this one is a wireless USB type. So those are much better right now because they are hot pluggable. Replace the keyboard and touchpad in laptops. So there are situations where you may have to replace the keyboard and touchpad on laptops. So what you need to do is to power down the laptop and remove AC adapter and battery, remove screws on the bottom of the laptop, turn the laptop over and open the lid, push the keyboard towards the lid while pulling it up to release it from the case, and bring the keyboard out of the case and forward. and the exposed keyboard should have ribbon cables which connect to the laptop. So almost all of the laptops in 2022 have ribbon cables, including MacBook Pros and MacBooks. So use a splugger or tweezer to lift those cables connectors up and out and replace the keyboard following these steps in a reverse order. If the touchpad is part of the keyboard bezel, remove the keyboard before removing the keyboard bezel. And you can follow the same process that we describe here for replacing the keyboard to replace the touchpad of a laptop as well. So they do come with the ribbon cable, and you would be able to push it out and pull a new one, put a new one back in. So here is a typical laptop keyboard replacement process shown here. So we have that ribbon cable right here, and you need to disconnect that ribbon cable from the laptop motherboard by right here. So you'll have a similar configuration depending on your motherboard manufacturer and the model number. And then these ribbon cables may or may not have clips. So sometimes you just pry it up and it'll disconnect. Sometimes there may be some clips that you need to push it out, where you need to put a screwdriver or something, or a splugger, like a plastic piece, to push those clips out before you pry it out. So be careful when you're prying them out. Make sure that there are no clips that holding that ribbon cable down to the motherboard connector. Ribbon cables must be handled with care, because if you damage any of the connections within those ribbon cables, it is impossible to repair. Like, it is next to impossible to repair. And more often time, the ribbon cable's other end is directly attached to the keyboard of the laptop and cannot be disconnected. So if you damage this ribbon cable, this entire keyboard is useless. So you have to replace the entire keyboard, because you can't just replace the ribbon cable. Of course, yes, there are places who can replace the ribbon cables, but typically in the field as an IT technician, you won't be able to just replace the ribbon cable if it is directly attached to this keyboard. So you probably have to send it back to the manufacturer, for example, if you really want to save that keyboard, right? Keep that in mind. The ribbon cable must be handled with care. Webcams. So a webcam, also known as a web camera or internet connected camera, some people call it, can be embedded on most laptops and can also be installed using a USB port or other port. And comes with built-in microphones in almost all situations, and you can use this microphone, or you can actually use a separate microphone port on the computer. It's you can use either or. So just because of a webcam has a built-in microphone doesn't mean that you can you have to use that particular microphone. You can use a webcam with a microphone, but you can plug it in a second microphone, and you can cancel out the webcam microphone for better audio quality. Use the setup CD to install the software and then plug in the webcam to a USB port. Most webcams in 2022 do not even require driver installation via CD. However, as the drivers should be automatically installed by Windows. So if you are using Windows 11, Windows 10 or Windows 8, for example, you just plug in any webcam and typically the Windows will automatically install drivers and everything. However, even though that's the case in 2022, you don't need to install it through a CD. Additional webcam software by the manufacturer may provide additional extra features or more features on your webcam. Like, for example, if you want to blur the background of your background of your video, obviously you can do it through messaging software such as MS Teams and other messaging software. However, you can also do that maybe through the webcam software provided by your manufacturer if you're recording a video without using a messaging software such as a MS Team. Like, let's say instead of using MS Team, you're using OBS Recorder to record yourself with a USB camera and something on your desktop, and you can use those additional software by the manufacturer to blur the background without using like MS Team or some other application. So You don't need to install these software and drivers nowadays with newer webcams, but sometimes it in 2022 it still provides some added benefits and features by doing so. So keep that in mind. And again, nowadays you can download this software directly from the internet without using CD or USB keys as well. One of the things that I find it really something that is in oversight by IT technicians in the field is the education of the end user on any of the IT equipment that we give into them, giving out to our end user. Like, for example, with respect to webcams, I hardly see many IT technicians actually educating the end user about webcam safety, because we automatically assume our end user is aware of the webcam safety and things like that. Even in 2022, there are hacks that I can even exploit with Windows and Linux machines, where I can turn on your webcam remotely if it is plugged in. So I think it is very important that you educate your end user on webcam safety, such as covering the webcam camera, the front lens when it is not in use. Some laptops by HP and IBM and Lenovo and bunch of other companies I have seen, they have those webcam safety covers already built into the laptop frames, but especially with non-built-in like the plug-in webcams, I would recommend that you educate your customers or end user about webcam safety, because that is an oversight by many field technicians and IT technicians. External microphones. So there are two types of connectors currently in use for external microphone. Again, the older 3.5mm jack version, which is like a connector that have been used for many years. And the newer connectors use USB connectors. Like, for example, this microphone that I'm speaking to right now use USB-C 3.0 connections, I believe. That can be used with the drivers and the firmware that is supporting this particular microphone. So the USB type microphones are more popular in 2022, and comes with their own audio drivers and software, and provide more flexibility in terms of how audio is processed, so that the manufacturer can have their way of processing that audio in the microphone, because they are using USB connectors and have more flexibility in how they do it. Printers and plotters. Large printers used for printing engineering diagrams, geological maps, and posters, and etc. are typically called plotters. So if you see these large printers, you will hear the term plotters, because these large printers are known as plotters for many years, because like in 1980s, those are used by universities and NASA and research laboratories, and they basically plot data, and that's where the term actually plotter come from. So therefore the large printers and typically known as plotters. So large printers looks like these, like right here. See these large scale printers, these are called plotters. The others are known as just printers. Like, for example, this is a desktop printer and this is a business type printer. So those are just called printers. USB printers basically use a USB cable to connect directly to a device and do not allow multiple connections. So typical USB printer only have one input for printing and one USB connection, and that one cable will connect to a single device, not multiple connections. And these are most commonly used in home environments, but however can be connected to a server using that AC USB connection, or it can be connected to a USB supported router to increase capabilities and shareability. So in other words, you can get a USB connected printer, something even a cheap home use printer like this Canon printer, and you can connect to your Windows server, Windows Enterprise server, for example, and then you can use the Windows Server printing network printing capabilities to make this USB printer into pretty much a network printer. And you can do the same thing with home routers that support USB connections. And you can plug a printer like this, a USB printer like this, to a USB printer supporting router, where the back of the router will have a USB connection. And you can plug this printer in there, and then now you can share this printer with multiple users in your house. So even though USB cable, only one USB cable can be connected to these type of printers, there are ways to make it shareable using either a server or using a router with a USB capability. The reason why USB printers are still popular is because they are cost effective in terms of unit price in most markets. I wouldn't say every market, because the reason for that is in Canada right now, you can actually buy a really cheap laser network connected printer for less than or around $100. And why would you want to buy a $30 printer when that is, doesn't have network connections for $100, few dollars more, that you can get a much better printer? So there are printers in Canada that goes for like $39.99, but you can get a printer with a network connection for just $100. So it is cost effective even in a cheaper market like Canadian market, because in Canada, where I am, is electronics equipment are extremely cheap. In fact, my friends in New Zealand and my friends in Asia, like in countries like India and Sri Lanka, they have a hard time buying these equipment. This printer costs way more in Sri Lanka than in Canada. This plotter in Canada right now go for about $700-800, but in Sri Lanka, it's even in Canadian converted dollars, it's going to be like over 2,000, right? So that's why the cost effective in terms of unit price, the USB printers, but not in all markets, because maybe in markets like Canadian market, even for home users, it may be a better option to go with a network connected printers over a USB printer, because the price difference is so low as of 2022. Wireless printers and network printers. So wireless printers offer Wi-Fi printing, either we are connecting to an existing wireless infrastructure. What that means is basically you can connect your printer to your Wi-Fi network or using Bluetooth. So that would be like a directly printing from your cell phone into the printer using Bluetooth. You can also, in addition to an existing wireless infrastructure you can connect to, like such as your wireless home Wi-Fi network, you can also sometimes direct Wi-Fi print from your cell phone or your mobile device, or such as a laptop, directly to the printer without even go through the infrastructure. So what's the difference between a wireless infrastructure and direct printing? Well, the wireless infrastructure, basically printer connects to your home or office wireless network, and then everybody in the office network can print across that wireless network or LAN connection into your printer. A direct Wi-Fi printing is basically you have a cell phone or a mobile device, which is not described on this slide. You directly print from your mobile device to the printer using your Wi-Fi connection. Bluetooth is another direct printing method where you can directly print from your laptop or cell phone directly to a Bluetooth enabled printer. So again, if you have a wireless printer that can connect to your wireless infrastructure, basically you now convert this USB printer that may not have a network printing LAN connection into a network printer, pretty much, by just connecting like that. And these type of wireless printers that offer Wi-Fi connections are often found in consumer printing market, so consumer printers market. Network printers directly connect to LAN via network cable. So that's another type of printers, cable connections that you can get. That type of network printers have a network interface card or NIC. These are typically referred to as network printers as opposed to wireless printers or USB printers, because they can directly connect to a local area network via a network cable, like a RJ45 cable. So basically this one has an RJ45 network connection, or Cat5e, Cat6 type of connection. This allows multiple users to send print requests at the same time. So you can have, in my house, I have a laser color printer that my brother, my mom, my dad, I myself print to at the same time. And there is no issue with that. So it allows multiple users to send print requests at the same time. And oftentimes the print server, in other words, the print queue support is built into the printer. So in other words, if my brother, my mom, and I, and my dad print, all of us print to my network printer at the same time, the print queue support is at the printer level. So it doesn't even do that on the Windows computer with the high-end network printer. It will do it at the printer level. So basically, my mom can hit print and shut down her computer while it is still queuing to print. As long as the print queue information is properly transmitted and transmission is completed to the printer, that's all she needs to do. But it's not the case in every network printer, because some network printers will do the print queuing support on the client end. In that situation, if my mom hit print and my dad also hit print, whichever the one that get delayed has to remain connected to the printer network, so that it can be transmitted. But what's really important here is that the network printers connect to the LAN network, and the network, your LAN local area network, will handle the print requests that will be delivered to the printer. These are very popular in business and enterprise environment, because now multiple users can interact with the printer without the need of plugging the printer into each of the end users devices. So you can have 200 people, for example, in the enterprise environment print into one single printer. And most network printers do, however, also offer USB cable options as well, in case somebody needs to connect that printer to, let's say, a Windows server directly for whatever the reasons. In 2022, some consumer printers comes with network capabilities, as I mentioned, even for cheaper price like just $100. So keep that in mind. Laser versus inkjet printers. So laser printers can be both color laser and black laser printers, and print much faster than inkjet printers. So if you hit print, the time it would take to print from an inkjet printer is very high compared to a laserjet printer. However, the color capabilities are lower than that of the inkjet printer. In 2022, I have been using a laser color printer from HP, which is a business grade, enterprise grade printer for the last 5 years. I didn't see a big difference between color, because I use for school, like a technical drawing printings and stuff like that, not necessarily like printing family pictures. So for me, a color laser printer makes more sense than inkjet. But when it's come to the point, all the details, technical details, yes, the color laser printers are lower in that type of color quality compared to inkjet printer. So if you want to print your family pictures on like photo paper, for example, you should use an inkjet printer, not a laser printer. Laser printers are cost effective in terms of per page printing cost. So per page cost is much cheaper, because the laser cartridges are toners are much cheaper per page compared to that of the inkjet. It is often recommended for businesses, office use, and enterprise environments because of that high yield capability of laser printers. And also another thing I want to point out, it is also recommended for business, office, and enterprise environment, because the cost associated with maintenance or maintaining those laser printers are typically lower in the long run compared to inkjet printers. Inkjet printers have higher quality color printing, especially for image printing, like picture printing using those image printing papers. Often support high quality image printing. Cost of ink cartridges can be higher. However, the market is changing for the better right now, because there are multiple companies such as Brother coming out with inkjet printers that provide much lower cost per page than traditional inkjet printers, even though they are still inkjet printers. And some inkjet printers, again by Brother, as well as I believe HP also have some inkjet printers that have refillable cartridges. So the market is slowly changing, but it is still not there to the point that it can catch up with like a laser color printers in terms of cost per page. The initial cost of the unit is typically lower than the laser printers. So a laser printers if is $250 Canadian, you can get comparable inkjet printer for $100. So that they can do the same thing. So that's why you made the price difference as well. But keep in mind, most laser printers are network connected printers, LAN connection printers, so it have additional capabilities. Most of them nowadays, inkjet printers do not. So keep that in mind. It's not just the inkjet versus laser, but it also other capabilities like the LAN capability I mentioned in the previous slides may also differ from inkjet and laser, because laser is more targeted toward business, office, enterprise environment. Almost most laser printers nowadays comes with LAN connection capabilities. So what is best for the home use? So as an IT technician in the field, it all depends on your end users needs and wants. So make sure you do a evaluation of cost versus benefit analysis of the laser versus inkjet, and decided case by case scenario, right? Printer capabilities. So capabilities, form factors, and other considerations that you need to also take into account when you come to the point printers is that, as with everything else in IT industry, not all printers are created equal. Even not all inkjet printers that looks very similar to each other not created equal. So enterprise and business needs cannot be met with a consumer type printing devices. Keep that in mind. So you may have a company that have 250 employees and it's a small business, and they insist that they use a consumer grade printer. Educate them why the enterprise and business need cannot be met with consumer type printing devices, because if you want to print a lot, and the overall cost in the long run going to be higher for those home use printers, so recommend them with the enterprise grade or business grade printer. Home use printers do not require the addition. Home use printers do. Home users. What I want to say here is the home users do not require the additional capabilities. So if you are setting up a printer for a high school kid or a junior high school kid or something like that, and their parents wants to buy the best printer available, buy the best inkjet printer maybe. Don't buy an enterprise grade printer like this, because cost savings. These printers cost like upwards of like $10,000. Most companies actually rent these type of printers so that it will be cheaper for them in the long run, because there are some tax savings and other things as well. So instead of buying the printers, most companies instead of purchasing like $10,000 printer like this, they just basically rent it. So why would you want to recommend a printer like this to a home user, right? So exactly. So the home user do not require the additional capabilities, maybe not even need the network capabilities unless they request for it. So keep that in mind. Some home users may prefer more capable printers. So in that case, yeah, sure. If you like in my house, we have 4 people printing to a one single printer. Obviously, I'm going to go for a network connected printer, right? So keep that in mind. So you have to be like people person, talk to your customer, know what they need. And printers and plotters typically cannot be plugged across USB devices. Oh, this is a typo. So printers and plotters cannot be typically. Oh no, it's not a typo. I misspoke. Printers and plotters typically cannot be plugged across UPS devices, so uninterrupted power supply devices. Why is that? Because whenever there is a printing happening, what's going to happen is it's going to suddenly draw a spike in power. So it's going to draw more wattage. So that is not typically handled well by uninterrupted power supply unit. So printers and plotters should never be plugged across UPS devices. If you are going to plug across a UPS device, make sure it is rated to handle those printers. This printer, if you plug it across a UPS device, that better be a really good enterprise grade UPS device. You can have UPS devices, but it has to be like enterprise grade specialized UPS devices. If you buy a typical business or home use UPS from the consumer market, please don't plug your printers across that, even home use laser printers across that, because those home use laser printers and small business use laser printers draw a lot of wattage, a lot of power when you start printing, and that will actually burn out your UPS, or the UPS will trip every single time you start to print. So that's something some people don't know. what this basically come down to is that high power draws in burst. So every single time there's a print, there will be high power draw in burst, which cannot be handled by your UPS. Bluetooth and wireless. So Bluetooth is a short range wireless technology, and we came a long way in Bluetooth technology as well, just like NFC and wireless technologies. So we have version 1.2 that started in 2005, that went all the way to 2021, that we have Bluetooth 5.3. By the way, the reason why I didn't go into depth of Wi-Fi technology in this lecture is because I'm going to have a separate complete lecture on network LAN systems and wireless. So that's why. So that, just keep that in mind. So the Bluetooth, we started with 1.2 in 2005. Now in current use as of 2022 is the 5.3, which came out in 2021. Some devices support Bluetooth, or you can add a USB plug-in device. So some of the laptops and even some desktop comes in built-in Bluetooth support, but some do not. In that case, you can have a USB plug-in device. So that is possible to add. It is possible to add a USB support using a dongle like this even. Used in input-output devices, very often utilizing input-output devices such as the keyboards, mouse pads, or mouse. And it is also found in cell phones, widely used in cell phones as well. So keep that in mind. When it comes to wireless, we have what we use in wireless technology when it comes to input and output devices, because that's the focus of this lecture, is RF, the radio frequency. RF is the wireless technology typically utilized. Either Bluetooth or RF are the two different types that are typically used by mouse and keyboards like these shown here on the bottom of the screen. Those devices use that RF technology to communicate wirelessly using a transmitter and a receiver. So receiver look like this, and the transmitter will be built into the keyboard. So the transmitter is almost always located inside the wireless device, such as the keyboard or the mouse, while the receiver would be a separate unit that plugs typically onto your USB port. And these are again using input-output devices. NFC. NFC is the near field communication. That's a technology that allows two devices near each other to communicate against each other. And it was first tested in 1983. The NFC technology became popular for plastic card-based payments such as credit card or debit card payments in the mid 2000s. So that's where when it first start to pick up speed. More secure than traditional swipe transactions due to encryption and tokenization. So what happens is every single time you need to pay something or do a financial transaction, if the NFC technologies typically use a tokenization method that only valid for that particular transaction at that moment, and it also uses a very good encryption. NFC can be used to transfer data between devices as well. So if you have, because it is initially developed in 1983 to communicate between two devices near each other, it still can be used for that purpose as well. So even though that is now becoming more and more popular with financial transactions. Like for example, if I have two Samsung phones, I can enable NFC and I can transfer a file between two different phones. So that's an example of another use of NFC. So in 2022, NFC is used in a variety of applications that includes the credit cards, debit cards, and reward royalty cards connections, smart cards, which is basically physical access controls. Like in the old days, we had a card where you can touch this particular sensor, and that sensor will unlock the door. But now with NFC, you can actually embed that card into your cell phone or NFC enabled device, and you can simply touch the cell phone or NFC enabled device such as an iPad or a Samsung Pad, and that will actually can act like a smart card for physical access control. Transit and transport fares such as monthly or yearly bus passes or even daily bus passes, verification of identity information That includes driver's license, COVID-19 vaccination cards, etc., etc. Those all can be built into NFC-enabled, secure wallets, right? Also, IT and other equipment tracking in business or enterprise environment. So you can actually use NFC tags to track certain things, like your devices, your inventory, by putting NFC tags everywhere. Another thing I haven't mentioned here in NFC, especially when it's come to the point home use, you can have reprogrammable NFC tags that you can stick it to your door or door frames or desk. When you go near them with your cell phone, it starts doing things, like turning on your lights or turning off your lights. Like if you have an NFC tag on your desk and you put your cell phone on the tag, and the lights turn on, and as soon as you take the cell phone out, all the lights goes dim, or for example. So you can do many things with NFC, because NFC tags, especially consumer tags, are reprogrammable, so you can actually use that to your advantage. That's not mentioned on this slide, is an additional thing that is used in 2022. There are mobile applications such as Google Wallet, Apple Pay, and Samsung Pay that utilize this NFC technology for their users, so that they can use it with all of these options such as credit card, smart card, transit card, etc., etc. Docking stations. Docking stations bridge the gap between portability and having stationary place to work, and allow addition of more input-output devices. So that's the primary purpose of a docking station. If somebody asks you during an A+ certification exam, what is the point of having a docking station, right? It basically to bridge the gap between portability of having a laptop type of computer configuration and also having the stationary piece of work. And that what docking stations usually do is increase the capabilities of your laptop or mobile devices. Some laptop manufacturers have proprietary docking stations, such as this one from HP, where specific models of HP laptops can plug into this docking station from the bottom. Like bottom of the laptop will get connected here, and that will increase the number of ports as well as give additional network connections, etc., etc. Additional features on those type of docking stations, which we use especially with laptops and mobile devices, can include turning a laptop into multi-monitor workstation, which I do for work at home right now. I have a docking station that converts my laptop into a multi-monitor, dual monitor setup. Additional USB ports, card readers, and audio support. So right here we have USB ports. Right here we see the card readers that been added as a result of a docking station. LAN connections, especially on laptops with no LAN connections, may have a docking station that you can purchase that would give you the capability of a LAN connection with proper LAN capabilities, because these docking station can have a variety of pins that that will be connecting to your laptop, allowing high throughput LAN connections to your laptop, right? So your laptop, on the bottom of your laptop, you might have enough connections points that can handle high speed internet. Add-on battery to extend battery. So I seen docking stations where it also have an internal battery built into it that will increase the battery life of your laptop. So typically I know the docking stations are used plugged onto the wall. So there is no need for additional battery, but there are some docking station that comes with an extended battery that allow you to add more capabilities to your mobile device. So that's what the docking stations do. They are mostly associated with laptops, and again, you can buy a non-proprietary docking stations like this one shown here, or you could buy a proprietary docking station shown here by HP. Graphics tablets. A graphic tablet, also called digitizing tablet, is used to hand draw items onto your computer. So it takes input, hand drawn input into the computer. They are likely to connect by USB port, comes with a stylus that works like a pencil, like shown here, like right here, or right here this guy is using. A graphic tablet and stylus can be replacement for a mouse or a touchpad. So there's certain tablets like this one allow you to use this as a touchpad as well, or a mouse for your computer when you're not using the pen. Popular with graphic artists and others who use desktop publishing applications. So there are certain applications that from Adobe that allow you to actually use these graphic tablets with specialized software and install the same way as any other USB drives devices. So with Windows 11, 10 and Windows 8, you can sometimes just plug in a graphic tablet and all the drivers will be installed, and you can use it with certain Microsoft programs such as Office 365, certain programs. However, with the manufacturer provider software, the graphic tablet manufacturer provider software, you can increase the capabilities. And also there are two major types of graphic tablets. They are the one that has a screen where you can actually see what you are drawing onto, and the other type of graphic tablet is this type of graphic tablets. They don't have a screen, so you have to keep an eye on your monitor while you are drawing on this tablet. So basically this would be the end of your monitor, this would be the other end, and the other end, and you calibrate it with the software and the drivers, and then you can draw it on here. But the other graphic tablets will have a screen where you actually draw it on the screen itself. So it's just like acting like a, like a Samsung or an iPad type of tablet, but have a little bit of more capability, specialized for this graphic digitizing tablet market. So even though in this type it is very similar to that of an iPad or a Samsung Pad, it's different because it has a little bit of extra capability, such as, like, for example, depth. Like you can change the tip of this, and then, like, in terms of how much pressure, like the pressure changes will be different in here, so they're more sensitive and you can adjust them. So that's why people still buy graphic tablets. Touchscreens. A touchscreen is an input device that uses a monitor or LCD panel as backdrop for input options. Some laptops and monitors for desktops do have built-in touchscreens. Yes, there are desktop monitors that do have built-in touchscreens as well as the all-in-one desktop computers often have touchscreens. Can be installed as an add-on, as I mentioned. For most installation, install drivers before connecting by the way of USB port. But then again, with the Windows 11 and Windows 10 and so on, you can just basically plug in those tablets, the touchscreens, monitors too. They will automatically install the drivers. Use management software that comes with the device to control and calibrate. So again, just like a touchscreen here, you can use the manufacturer provider software to calibrate and get more functions out of a touchscreen. Virtual reality headsets, so they are getting popular in 2022. So a VR or virtual reality headset is a device worn on the head that increases a visual and audible virtual experience for user using a lens, display, speakers, microphone, and head tracking sensors for interaction. So often used for extreme gaming and military training, but also used in other sectors as well. I've seen virtual reality being used in Alberta oil and gas companies to walk inside a oil well, like a 3D oil model, like a directional well. VR headset can be programmed independently of a computer. So you can, the VR headsets typically comes with chipsets that are already built into the headset that can be programmed outside the computer. Or the headset can be connected to a computer using USB for a more programming input or recording experience. Some VR headsets includes a dock for smartphones where you can put your smartphone inside the VR headset, and then your smartphone will be acting as part of the your entire VR headset. So those are some of the things that you should know as an A+ student. Biometric devices. A biometric device inputs biological data about a person to identify the person's fingerprint, handprint, face, voice, eye, or handwritten signatures. So that biometric devices encompasses all of that. The most common type of biometric device that you will find right now in 2022 would be the fingerprint readers. So fingerprint readers may included within a mouse, so it could look like a mouse itself, or it could be in the mouse, like a touchpad mouse. You touch it and it will automatically read it. Use wireless or USB connections. So there could be like a separate component and can be embedded onto the side of the keyboard, flash drive, or a laptop. So here's a situation where it is embedded right onto a laptop, and right here there is a fingerprint reader. So it could be already embedded in the mouse, or could be connected via a separate USB device, or could be embedded onto the keyboard or the flash drive or the laptop. So you could have flash drives where you need to have a fingerprint scanner in order to read. So read documentation to know if you should install drivers before plugging in the device, but typically you can just plug it in and works with Windows 11 and Windows 10 for sure, like in most cases. So keep that in mind. While the fingerprint reader is the most common type of biometric device currently in use in 2022, keep in mind, it is possible to have handprint, face, voice, hand written signature readers as well as biometric devices. They are not widely used in the market right now, such as the face recognitions, except in devices such as iPhones, where Apple have perfected the face recognition to the point that it is secure enough to use it in the widely available market. But other than Apple iPhones, face recognition is not something that typically use. Certainly not the voice recognition. Face and eye recognitions are now becoming a little bit popular, but still the most popular one would be the fingerprint readers. Barcode readers. So the barcode readers are used to scan barcodes on products at point of sale, also known as POS. And these are commonly found in like supermarkets and stores. So several interface methods includes the wireless connected barcode readers, serial port connected, USB port connected, or keyboard port connected. If the reader uses a keyboard port, it is most likely contain a splitter. So you basically a keyboard wedge type splitter for keyboard use, and the data read by the barcode reader as the input into the system. So it uses the same keyboard connection, either it's a USB or a PS2 or something connector, but then you have a splitter that where you're going to connect your the barcode reader. So that's how they use it in the markets and supermarket, etc. Pay devices, a magnetic stripe reader and chip reader can be used to read from stripe or chip to pull information from credit cards and debit cards and licenses, for example. Basically sends information to the computer through a serial connection, USB connection, lightning connection. Even 3.5mm headphone jack or stripe reader wedge mounted on a keyboard can be used to connect these type of connectors. So you can actually use a headphone jack to connect a magnetic stripe reader or a chip reader. A tap pay device connects wirelessly or by cable to a computer or mobile device to turn it into a point of sale system. You probably heard about Square readers. They actually use wireless connections, Bluetooth connections to connect to cell phones and sometimes. So NFC, Google Wallet, so they are based on NFC. So they include things like Google Wallet, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay. They all use some type of a tap device connector, which I have briefly covered in my NFC slide. Signature pads. So a signature pad uses a sensitive touch screen to capture a handwritten signature made using a stylus or finger for a receipt, contract, or ID card. So typically it will come with a stylus like this. So we don't typically use the finger, but you can use the finger if you want to. The signature pad LCD panel displays the electronic ink. So basically just going to show what they actually type it in. We call it electronic ink. It's not really ink anyway. So the signature pads typically use serial or USB connection and include software installed on the computer to process that signature. This is often used in banking and government sector because it is more reliable than the other method. So and also the texture of these pads are much more closer to that of paper. So people are more likely to print the proper proper signature on these type of pads. So it is more commonly used in banking and government sector environments. KVM switches. KVM switches stand for keyboard, video, and mouse switches. So that type of switches allow the use of one keyboard, mouse, and a monitor for multiple computers. So that's the whole point of KVM switches. It is useful in server rooms or labs because reason for that is when you have multiple servers and computers located in one place, you don't want to have 10 monitors for 10 computers, or 2 monitors for even 2 computers, or 3 computers, or 4 computers. Having 4 monitors for 4 computers is kind of redundant. So that way you can connect one monitor, one keyboard, and one mouse onto a KVM switch and connect 4 servers, or connect 4 computers, such as a server and a desktop computer and other 2 servers, for example. And they do not require device drivers, and just plug in the cables from each computer to this KVM switch and it should work. The only time a KVM switch may need device drivers and may also need a software if the KVM switch may come with some kind of a specialized hotkey that you can use, or software you can use to switch between different devices, as opposed to having hardware keys such as this one. But again, some of these KVM switches doesn't even need the software or to do it, because the Windows will automatically install the drivers to allow the switch between computers using those hotkeys on the keyboard without using any hardware keys. And again, the cheaper models will have the buttons on the KVM switch, or some models may even have wireless remotes where you can press a wireless remote and that will switch between different devices. So that's what the purpose of a KVM switch. Home users, as far as it goes, some home users may use KVM switches in certain environments, but most typically used in lab and enterprise environment, like a server room environment. And that would bring us to the end of this lecture. If you like these type of lectures, please thumbs up this video and subscribe to my channel. Until next lecture, good luck with your exams and have a nice day.